Howdy do, I'm Lily, I'm your basic dork, artist and animator. I'm suspicious to all airport security and I'm writing multiple television shows. Here's a few illustrations I've made over the years, give you a sample of what my art looks like. Overall, I like to believe I'm a fairly decent artist. But would you believe me if I told you that I took an online drawing course and got a fail on an art assignment? Would you believe me if I told you I got 2 Fs on drawing assignments? Well, the fact of the matter is, I did, and one of those fails I absolutely did not deserve. I'm going to share the story, as well as all the art I did for this course, and share what I learned from this experience. It's the Lily Factor! Ding! So the setup for the course involved having teachers and students, of course, but there was also a separate grader. The first assignment was to turn fruits into characters, with the overall objective being to focus on the shapes of fruits. So I looked into finding weird or exotic fruits and picking some fruits I had personally never heard of or tried, because I didn't want it to be too cliche. We were given the restriction that it just had to be the shape of a fruit turned into a character, and so I didn't want it to mirror too much of like Veggie Tales or just something that someone else was already gonna do. So that's why I picked different kinds of fruits, and I explored the insides of fruits, like when they're cut, how they look with the seeds, and I kind of like the idea of using that for the design. So first I thought glasses, but then I thought, what if they were like bikers and they had wheels that were like sliced fruit? But I couldn't find a way to communicate that idea clearly with the given time I had to do the assignment, so I ended up scrapping that. Though looking back, I would have loved to see how I could actually make that idea work, because that sounds really fun to draw. I mean, I did still keep the fruit characters as bikers, but I just didn't give them motorcycles to have. And so while this was a drawing course, the primary focus was on drawing for character design, specifically aimed towards the animation industry. So we were learning core principles for character design that would be applicable to animation. I'd also like to take a moment to appreciate these sliced lines that I'm painting. Put a lot of time into it and I really liked how they turned out, but of course they had to be scrapped. I'll always remember you, sweet limes. Now this art in this course that you're seeing was done years ago, and the objective of this video is not to knock the course. I really enjoyed this course, and it's not even to really attack the grader. It's more so for reflection, to kind of share what I learned, and maybe help some people who have also dealt with the struggles of getting feedback or bad grades in art. For the next assignment, we were supposed to design characters full of personality based off of specific shapes. And boy, do I tell you, I was struggling with this assignment. I didn't want to approach the shape design in a very cliche way, because of course there's the principle of like you can design a character based off of shapes like Mickey Mouse. His head is round, his ears are round, his hands are round, his body's round. It's very clear what the shape is that he represents. But I didn't want to do that. It wasn't really my art style, and I'm always trying to find a way to follow the rules, but in a unique way, kind of twist around, spin it to something that's different. It's about taking something that exists, but approaching it in a different way so that it feels new, even though it's not really that new. And so I was struggling. I went through a lot of different sketches trying to come up with a character based off of shapes, but in a non-obvious way. I even drew myself commentating on that one drawing, because that character looked like she broke her foot to do that pose. If I found a sketch I liked, I would work more on that character to see if it could be something I could do for the assignment, because I had to make 3 different characters for this assignment. There was another part of me struggling with this assignment because I had gotten the grade and feedback on my fruit character design assignment from the grader, and it made me a little apprehensive towards what feedback I'd get for this assignment. My grader did give me an A for the fruit designs, but had said that I needed to exaggerate shapes more and not play it safe, that I had too much texture in my drawings. And so I was kind of like, wait, I played it safe? How did I play it safe? So I was a little curious as to what I was going to get for this next assignment. And I'm not going to talk about everything the grader said in the sense of like that they were wrong with everything they said. I think every bit of advice they give can be applicable to a lot of that. I got a suggestion to make the glasses bigger on one of the fruit characters, which I thought was fun and was the kind of feedback I hoped to get to add to the design. There was this looming, I'm not really sure what to expect from the grader, but I want to make sure I get good grades. You know, that's where it gets the artist's struggle is you can't just please yourself, you gotta please the person who's in charge of your grades. I did finally get an idea to design a character with hair made up of circular shapes, so I kind of continued that with other characters. Like this guy, he's made up of a lot of different shapes. He's got like really rectangular pants, he's got triangular hair, the circular balloon, the circle patterns on his socks. I remember my mom was so weirded out by his design. She's like, pants don't work like that, Lily. And just this past year, she actually saw someone wearing pants just like his. And so, but also, clearly it is a good design if my mom remembered it all these years later and was like, look, Lily, these pants do exist, you were right! Then for the girl in the middle, I gave her a triangular pose, triangular shapes in her hair, triangular shapes in her outfit, and of course for a circle-haired girl, she had rounded curves in every aspect of her design, between like the sleeves on her shirt, the bulges on her ski pants, the fluff on her boots, even the soles on her boots were circular. I probably didn't follow the assignment as intended, being character design for probably 2D animation, so my drawings were too complex and my grader did ping me on that. Ended up getting a B+ on the assignment, and the grader said that the drawings were nice, but they weren't quite characters, that the females' personalities were too similar. They were both very confident, which yeah, I like drawing confident characters. Although I felt that the triangular girl was more serious and the other girl was more playful. And while the grader could see what shapes I was trying to go for, they wanted me to push shape and proportion more, that my art was too normalized and human with proportions, which made for an okay illustration, but not for character design, that I should focus on the big shapes and not the details. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way, if I'm being honest, because I think while I very well could have drawn more simplified characters based off of shapes, I was hoping to get more feedback on character design and not so much how the style of the design was done, like the stylization. And that was the issue I ran into, was most of the time the feedback I got from the grader was critiquing my stylistic drawing choices more so than the actual design choices. So going into the third assignment here, which was to design a monster character, I was really struggling because now they wanted us to apply the things we had learned from the first two assignments into the character design, but we also needed to think about silhouette value. And does the character's silhouette look like a monster? And I personally love creature character design. I love drawing creatures, whether they're humanoid or robot or animals. It's really fun for me, but I do those for projects I work on secretly, and so I can't share that kind of art. And so I was really trying not to draw a monster type of creature that had any resemblance to the character designs I do on my own, because I like to protect those ideas. And then I also struggle too with, sometimes it's very easy to accidentally make a drawing look too creepy or too scary, and I didn't want to do that because I'm not really into horror art or making that, and I was aware of my classmates in this course that some of them should not see anything super creepy looking either. But then that became another struggle of trying to make a monster character that's not too scary, that silhouette actually looks like a monster. And now applying my greater feedback of basing it off of shapes more. So I went through a lot of different versions of monster characters each time, thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get critiqued for this or for this. And so like the first monster drawing I had done that I had colored, I realized there were too many like complications in the design that are just not practical. As fun as it was, it just would not be practical. And I felt like the grader probably would ping me on the shape again. So this time I really made the shapes basic. I drew a rhombus, a right triangle, and an octagon. And I made sure to use just those three shapes throughout the monster character. Looking back, I think I was just too hard on myself for this particular drawing. I think it was a fine character design. I think the reason I didn't turn it in though is because, again, the silhouette value didn't look like a monster and the character came across too sweet and regal to be a monster. This was the assignment that I did get an F on, and the reason for that was because I didn't turn it in time. I had a week to do this assignment, and I didn't turn it in until a few days after the first week it was due. The way the course was organized is that you could still get a grade on your assignment if you turned it in late. You just wouldn't get feedback from the grader if you got it in later than the due date. While I could have still gotten a grade instead of an F for the assignment, I just didn't bug the grader about it because I figured, you know what, I kind of deserve the F. I didn't turn it in time. And in the real world, if you don't meet your deadlines, that's bad news, so it's good training. Though later I did contact the grader about the F because I needed to contact them about a different F I got that I didn't deserve, but we'll talk about that later. For this monster design, this one ended up being my favorite and was the one I ultimately turned in. I wanted to give the character hip-hop style fashion, so I gave him like harem pants and hip-hop poses. I thought that would be fun and I had a lot of fun doing it. But again, the issue was the silhouette looked very human, didn't look like a monster, even though I gave the character freakishly long neck. But at this point, I had already gotten the F, and so I was like, I just need to turn this assignment in, get it over with, because I probably won't be able to get the stylization and shapes the grader wanted without just changing my art style. We did get feedback from the teacher of the course on some of the art assignments, but the teacher was not the grader. So at the end of the day, the grader is the one who had the power. But we still could get like feedback from the teacher and classmates, both of which gave more positive feedback and design ideas. And so I will say I did learn later on that there were other students who also struggled with this exact same grader, and the reason I know they had the same graders because they up and ratted out the grader's name. And it seemed like even students who had more simplistic art styles than even mine were also getting critiqued more so on their art style than their character design. And it's not to say that stylization doesn't have a role in character design. I think it does, but I don't think stylization is what makes a good character design per se, though I think it certainly can help. But I do remember the teacher constantly reiterating to students, art is subjective, so take the feedback with grace. But these were the monster designs that I did for the assignment, and then on to assignment 4, which was to design with repetition. So we were supposed to create a character design that had repeating curves or shapes or patterns to try and maintain a harmony in the design and make it more distinctive. I ended up creating like a feathery animal type of creature, and I experimented with different colors for feathery arms, and I ended up turning in the red, blue, and purple variation for the grader, and the grader ended up giving me a B+ for the assignment. Said I needed to try more basic shapes, look at animal anatomy, and the graders can also like draw reworks of your drawing. Their version of reworking my drawing was based on kangaroo anatomy, which they said is what my character reminded them of. They said I should try to base creatures like this off of real animals, which I gotta say I disagree. If you're trying to make a new creature no one's ever seen before, I don't think it should be based off of something people have already seen. I get they were partially saying it to help you figure out anatomy better, but for copying real animals' anatomy to a T, I can only see that being applicable if you're making like a mutant type of creature that's a combo of real animals. But I don't think things should always be based off of real life. Real life is inspiration, but imagination isn't bound to any rules or constraints. For the 5th assignment, I needed to make a character with human structure, so I started with the human drawings with based off shapes and stuff, and I didn't like it, and I figured I'd get pinged on it, so I ended up just free doodling a harp in my sketchbook, and I ended up creating and turning in this drawing of a girl who is a harp. And my grader actually really liked it. They said I was starting to get it and that the gestures were nice, but structurally it needed to be a little more solid, but I was starting to get there. I don't really know what I was starting to get, but yay! On the 6th assignment, it was time to design a character with animal structure, and we were back to the grind of struggling. Did some like animal studies, did a bunch of different sketches and stuff. I think overall, I just didn't want to design an existing animal creature, so I started to just kind of make up something as I went, but I wanted it to be a more distinctive character than just an animal. I wanted it to have something different. I was also starting to notice around this point that anytime I did a character design that was a little different from the status quo is when the grader would give me better grades, like the harp girl, where I was supposed to do a human structure character, but I did a human structure with like a harp character. So I figured, okay, if I keep doing something a little out of the box, I might get more feedback that can help like with the character design than just the stylization. So I explored drawing this kind of wolfish creature that had a life vest, thinking maybe they're like a whitewater rafter, or maybe I should give them like a jetpack or something. I ended up going with the whitewater rafting. So I took all the time, did all the brainstorming sketches, and then I did this illustration here of the character whitewater rafting. And you know what? This was not what I turned in for this assignment. By the time I had finished the illustration, I realized I shouldn't turn this in. This does not show that I have a grasp of animal structure because the raft is covering the majority of this character's anatomy. So it defeated the whole purpose of the assignment. And by then, I had really little amount of time left to turn in the assignment before it was due. So I ended up just half-heartedly just throwing together this design of like this dog that has a collar that's a chandelier. I don't know how my brain got there. I wish I could explain, but yeah, I ended up turning this in so that I could demonstrate a little more of the animal structure since that was the assignment. But as you can see, I did not put as much effort into it, so it kind of backfired. I remember the grader saying to make sure that I understood the anatomy, try and simplify the shapes, make the anatomy more clear, because I didn't do that because I rushed it. But hey, I got an A-. So the 7th assignment was to do facial structure. So I just kind of sketched in my sketchbook, ended up drawing kind of like an elderly woman, and then I was supposed to draw them front facing, 3/4, and then profile. So I did that as well, and then I touched up the drawings, turned those pictures in, and I got an A. The grader was really impressed that I tackled something as ambitious as drawing an elderly character, but that I should try to simplify. And then for the hand structure assignment, I tried to make the character's design asymmetrical so that for the grader they could understand which hand was the left hand, which hand was the right hand, as I was supposed to draw different hand poses for the character design. But the grader didn't catch that, and so was fixing hands where the thumb and the pinky were in the wrong place. But they said to watch for construction issues and simplify hand construction. Oh well, I got an A on it. Now for the 9th assignment, the undeserved fail. I was supposed to do gesture practice. Now this was around the holidays, so we had an extra week to work on this assignment. I think we were supposed to do 30 different gesture drawings, and I did those all during class with like a rough pencil sketch, but I figured they were too rough, so I redid them in pen. I had the assignment done on the first day, but I hadn't turned it in because we had extra time and they gave us the option to draw characters in addition to the assignment to have those graded. So I wanted to draw some of the characters I already had made, kind of tying in their story. So like the triangular girl is walking the animal creature, or the circular girl is shoveling snow and is giving our balloon man his balloon, you know? I wanted to tie those in, but since it was around the holidays, I got a little too ambitious and didn't have time to finish those. And so hoping to get feedback on those drawings, I hadn't turned in the gesture drawings yet so that they didn't get feedback without those drawings. But since I didn't finish these or turn these in, we lead to the next part of the story. The day the assignment was due, I'm with my family and I get a notice on my phone that says, "You got an F on your assignment." And I was like, what? So I double check the due date. I look, I got an F on the assignment the day before it was due because the grader had just assumed it was the regular due date instead of the extended date because of the holidays. So then I immediately turned in the gestures that day to make sure it wasn't late, and I contacted the grader and said, "Hey, why did I get an F on this? It wasn't late." And also mentioned that I should also get a grade on the other F assignment. I just couldn't get a feedback video because it was late. And so the grader responded, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'll fix those grades." But the grader never did. In hindsight, I should have just kept bugging the grader to get my grades fixed, because by the end of the course, the transcript was turned in with 2 Fs. I had to learn that lesson twice that year because I also had taken a business course the previous year, entered a lot of business plan competitions, one of which I won first place and was given a cash prize. The money was sent to the organization that taught the course, and they were supposed to then give the money to those of us who won places in the business plan competition. I, for over a year, had to keep hounding the person who taught the course to give me the prize money because they kept giving me the runaround. So if you want something to be fixed, you really have to bug people to do it. That's the lesson, guys. I remember contacting the other winners at that time to see if they had gotten their prize money yet, and they hadn't. Hopefully they've gotten it by now. The other lesson is, of course, turn your work in on time. That's a given, but also don't be your worst critic. At the end of the day, there are going to be people who don't get what you're trying to create or don't like your art. And yes, you will have to create art that's supposed to please your employer or your grader or whatever. You got to do what you got to do, but also like don't overthink it. I think that a lot of times that I got overcritical and overthought were the times I got not as good grades on my drawings for this course, whereas times I just kind of let go and did what I wanted to do, I got better grades, even if I didn't always care for the feedback, though sometimes I got nice words. For this last assignment, we were supposed to design a character and do a turnaround sheet, pose sheet, and expression sheet so that the character could be ready to go for animation, and this was getting even more into the holidays, so I had really lost steam. I was just burnt out, frustrated with art and everything, so I didn't really like fully polish this. I wanted to do a character design that would actually be useful for me. So I took Nadja, my New Year redraw character. You can learn more about her in my New Year redraw videos, and I used her as the character design. And I wanted to make it to where it was for an idea I've had for a couple years of doing an animation with this character, having her like start in a hospital down and depressed and then ultimately become happy and excited. And so I wanted to have this design for her be her kind of like sad in a hospital gown with like an IV, but the IV turns into the lamppost that's in the illustrations I have of her, and that her hair is kind of like not as fluffy and sad. And we were also allowed to recycle gesture drawings we had done for the pose sheet, so I ended up recycling one of those for the drawings. I remember both the teacher and the classmates really liked the boots I gave the character, and I just remember being kind of surprised by that, like, oh, I didn't really put that much effort into those, but okay. A few weeks after I had done the assignment where I drew the elderly woman and the grader had responded really positively to that drawing, a few weeks later, the grader had sent a message to all the students that they were grading saying, hey, I'm sorry that my reviews haven't been turned in yet. I'm running a little behind because my grandmother passed away and I've been dealing with that, so I'm going to be a little late. And I remember thinking that was kind of interesting that I drew this elderly woman and that this grader had lost their grandmother just a little bit later. And I almost kind of wondered if that's why they responded so positively to that drawing. You just never know what your art can mean to somebody else. And so it's important to not be so self-critical. And on the subject of being self-critical, I was worried I was going to get pinged for having such sketchy drawings, so I did have to do a lot of drawings for this assignment. But I ended up getting an A. The grader just fixed a few anatomical issues, but was actually really pleased with what I did, so yay! This is all the art I made for the drawing course. The big takeaways here are to turn your work in on time, communicate, and don't overcomplicate and be too self-critical. You know, feedback can be difficult sometimes, but ultimately you've got to be pleased with your work first and foremost, and then try and please your grader or your client, because people can surprise you by what they do or don't like. The grader kept telling me to simplify my art, which I get for 2D animated character design, that it would need to be simple, so I keep the advice in mind, but on my own, I stay true to how I design characters. Getting that feedback made me more aware when teaching private lessons with my own art students to not critique the style of how they draw, but more give feedback on where they could improve. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and encouraging if you've ever dealt with art feedback or getting bad art grades, that you're not alone, and may God bless you in your life and your art. Bye!